and welcome to Little Learners. Recently someone asked me if they should go into teaching in 2023 with the world being as it is, and that every time they ask a teacher or anyone really, they're told not to do it. And could I tell them some positives about becoming a teacher? To which I said, okay. I thought it would be really good to make a video about the pros and cons of becoming a teacher in 2023. This will go for people who are thinking about going into teaching, but also those of you who are teaching and wondering if you should stay in the profession. I just want to note that my eyes might look a bit strange in this video. That's because I have conjunctivitis, but we will just continue with the video and ignore them. Okay, how should we do this? Shall we do pros and then cons, or a pro and a con? I think I'll do a pro and then a con and just keep going, and hopefully we won't run out of pros. Before we get started, don't forget to click that subscribe button and click the bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. I often, when I post my videos, do premieres, which means that I am there in the live chat when the video goes live and we can chat together, which is always really fun. And if you find this video helpful, please do click the like button. Let's get into it. So the first pro of being a teacher is the starting salary. It has a very good starting salary. So if we look at the table, which I have here, but I'll pop on the screen. In England, the minimum starting salary for a qualified teacher is £28,000. In London Fringe, it's £29,344. Outer London, £32,407, and Inner London, £34,502. So those are the minimum starting salaries for qualified teachers in those areas. Obviously, it could be a little bit higher depending on the school. I know that when I started teaching, which was obviously quite a while ago now, the school that I got my first job in gave you a band up in salary rather than the minimum requirement, because they wanted to attract the best teachers they could, and they decided with their governors that if they were going to be employing the best teachers, then that should be reflected in their salary when they start. So it might be a little bit different from school to school, but those are the minimums. So that is quite a decent starting salary for a job. Obviously you have gone through a lot of training, so you certainly deserve a good starting salary. A con related to teachers' salaries is that they do not follow inflation. The Institute of Fiscal Studies has found that more experienced teachers are on average receiving 10% less when you compare a salary to inflation, and newly qualified teachers are in effect getting 5% less than they would have been when you factor in inflation. So there is a good starting salary, but there is also this concern that teachers are not being paid enough to keep up with the rise in the cost of living, which is a problem across a lot of public sector jobs. You may have heard that teachers and unions have been very vocal about this, and the talks between unions and the government have not been going very well. The government did not offer anything near what unions said teachers need, and so I think we're going to be seeing more strikes, unfortunately. Okay, our second pro is that a teaching qualification from the UK, where I am from, is really widely respected across the globe, which kind of links in with another pro, which I'm just going to say now. That gives you a really good opportunity to travel the world and teach in other countries, experience other cultures, learn other languages, if that's something that you're interested in. I know a lot of teachers who have gone to travel and teach in different countries, and actually I know very few who come back. So it really is, once you have your teaching qualification, this key to kind of unlocking the rest of the world, if that is something that you're interested in. Con number 2, the training to become a teacher is incredibly intense, particularly if you take the route of a PGCE, for example, which is 1 year, and it's just a lot thrown at you. You cannot take a day ill. Well, okay, technically you can. You have like a quota of how many you're allowed to take, but any day you miss is like missing 3 weeks of another job. You are learning about pedagogical theories, you're doing essays and assignments and presentations, and you're planning for the lessons that you're teaching as you're in your practice schools, going in to do your teaching practice, and you're being assessed all the time. It is very, very intense. And so I think that's something that a lot of people need to know. And I have known people to go into teacher training and decide that it is way too intense for them and drop out before they get their qualification. So it's something to definitely consider if you're thinking about going into teacher training. So because we put 2 pros together, I will put another con with this one, and that is that even though you've done a lot of training and you have proved yourself, you have become a qualified teacher, you have the knowledge, you have trained in this for years, you're still not really very well respected. And unfortunately, this seems to just be getting worse. But it's not just parents and carers that you have to worry about, it's the other staff in your school, the senior management team who, depending on what school you're at, will depend on how much respect you get from them. And I know that we've seen lots of horror stories, and I have experienced this myself. We also have the government and their lack of respect for teachers. The absolute scrutiny and judgment and questioning that teachers receive from these higher authorities is ridiculous. If you think about how much training teachers have gone through and how experienced a lot of them are, and yet they're still being treated as though they don't know what they're doing by people who have no training in education. That can be incredibly frustrating, and a lot of the time it feels like a really thankless job. Okay, another pro. You get about 13 weeks holiday a year. This does come with a caveat, I will come to that. So obviously this means you get a lot more holiday, time off work than many other professions do. So you can spend your time travelling if you want to, or pursuing a hobby, or maybe even a second career if that's something you really want to do. If you want to do something that you're passionate about, maybe you like to write, maybe you want to write a novel and you can use some of this time to be doing that. Maybe you want to travel around and see family more, then that might give you the opportunity to do that. However, I did say there was a caveat with this, and that is our next con, I'm afraid. And that is that even though we get all these holidays, they're not actually holidays. So what I mean by that is a lot of that time is spent doing work, just not in the classroom. So you're doing all of the paperwork, all of the planning. You are probably going into school during these holidays for a period of time, maybe a few days depending on which holiday it is, to prepare your classroom for the upcoming half term. There are likely going to be school events like a summer fair or a Christmas craft fair or something that you also are expected to attend that you don't get paid for. That is a whole other thing. And also the fact that you have these predetermined weeks of holiday means that you can't take holiday whenever you want to. Now this comes into play a lot when, you know, you might have a group of friends who are going away for 3 days or something, and they say, do you want to come with us? It's super cheap during term time, but you can't because you cannot take holiday. You can only have holiday during the half-term breaks or the summer break. So holidays do become very expensive, and you don't have that freedom to take time whenever you want to. You don't have that freedom to say, do you know what, I'm feeling quite burnt out or stressed at the moment, I think I'm going to take a few days off. Can't do that. Another pro, though, is that there are currently a lot of teaching vacancies. So if you are looking to become a teacher and you're thinking, oh, I hope that I'll be able to get a job and that there will be enough vacancies available, there probably will be. Compared to the year before the pandemic started, teaching vacancies seem to be up about 93%. That is huge. Compared to the 2021-2022 academic year, teaching vacancies are up 37%. So year on year, we're seeing a fall in the amount of teachers that we have and a rise in the amount of vacancies. The government continues to miss their targets on employing enough teachers each year, and so there are a lot of schools looking for teachers right now. Next con, though, if you thought that becoming a teacher meant that you would be in the classroom all of the time, you are sadly mistaken. Unfortunately, teachers are taken out of the class way more than they should be because of paperwork and meetings and all of these hoop jumping things that we have to do as teachers, when really all we want to do is be in the classroom with the children. In fact, the Teacher Workload Survey in 2019 found that teaching hours only make up 47% of the total working hours of a primary school teacher. A lot of those hours are also extra hours after school, after our contracted hours have ended, and so it's a lot. Our next pro, though, is probably one of the most important things about teaching, and that is that you get to teach the next generation and watch them learn. And particularly as a primary school teacher, and especially as an early years teacher, I found that this is just so rewarding. Watching children come into your classroom at the beginning of the year who don't know how to read yet, and then you teach them how to read, and by the time they leave you, they're reading books. That is just incredible. And the inquisitive questioning that you get from them, it really is such a pleasure and an honour to be part of the educational journey for these children. And that is something that certainly hasn't changed. That is something that I think keeps most teachers in their profession at the moment. Even teachers who consider leaving, I think this is the thing that really keeps them there. A con would be the unrealistic expectations, which I've kind of touched on, leading to a very, very heavy workload and a lot of responsibility that's kind of just expected of you. So obviously we have the responsibility of caring for the children and managing their progress and teaching them. But we also have responsibilities such as leading a subject or leading a year group, doing clubs during lunchtime or after school, being the lead on something else, and a lot of the time this doesn't get any extra pay, especially it seems to be in primary schools because you're just a small school, so everyone has to take on more responsibility. It's just expected of you, and of course that takes up more time. The whole idea that, you know, teachers shouldn't complain because they get all of these holidays, I think that is starting to change a little bit more now, and people are starting to realise that actually the workload teachers have is beyond ridiculous. Next pro is about having fun with the students. So I talked about how wonderful it is to see them learn, but actually you can have so much fun with the children. It can be a really fun job some of the time when you're with the children, when you're having such a laugh with them, when you're being silly or you're learning about something really interesting, something that they are really interested in, and so you're all just kind of bouncing off of each other with ideas, and it's just so much fun. Especially for me, when I was teaching in early years, that was just the most fun. I know that's not for everyone, and for some teachers, teaching in secondary is much more fun because you can have more intellectual discussions with the students that you're teaching. But whichever year group you like to teach, there is certainly an element of fun there, and something that is different every day, different type of fun every day. Next con kind of links to some that I've spoken about already, about being constantly scrutinised and judged, and there really isn't enough support for teachers to cope with the workload and the stress of the job. And so we have seen a great decline in teachers' mental health. In fact, the Nazareth Wellbeing Survey of 2021 found that 91% of teachers report that their job has adversely affected their mental health in the last 12 months. So that's almost all teachers struggling with the effect that their job has had on their mental health, having a negative impact on their mental health. And I think you could probably see a theme here with mental health, stress, workload These are all things that kind of come together to make this a very, very difficult profession. And these are usually what people are referring to when they say don't go into teaching, it's too difficult or it's not worth it. Of course, there are certainly parts of teaching that are worth it. It just depends if, for you, the pros outweigh the cons. So let's get on to another pro. There are lots of different routes into teaching, lots of different training opportunities. So I have a whole video on routes into teaching. I will link that in the description box below and in a card up here somewhere. So you might have done a degree for 3 years and then decided, you know what, I do want to go into teaching. And so you can do a PGCE, or you might decide before you go to university, I want to be a teacher, and you can do a whole degree in teaching, more in depth. You might decide later on in life that you want a career change, and there will be a training avenue for you too. There are training opportunities that are more like an apprenticeship, so you're learning on the job. There are training opportunities that mean you get paid while you're training. So take a look at that video if you're interested in learning more about the different routes into teaching. But I think that that is something that is really wonderful about getting into teaching. And that is that everyone can probably find a route to suit them best. Now, I don't think I could probably make this video without mentioning the con of Ofsted. I do have a whole video about the issues with Ofsted and why teachers are so upset and angry about Ofsted right now, so I will link that in the description and in a card as well, so that you can learn more about that. But again, it's a lot to do with being judged and scrutinised and hoop jumping exercises. Now, those are all the pros and cons I'm going to talk about today. I don't know how long this video is now, but I feel like I've been talking for a long time. Should you become a teacher in 2023? Should you be a teacher in 2023? I mean, it's really up to you. There are definitely pros about being a teacher. There are things about being a teacher that I absolutely love. But there are also things that make it very difficult, and particularly if you're someone who needs a flexible working arrangement, it's very difficult to do in teaching. And so for those of us who have young children, or maybe we're a carer for a family member, or maybe we just don't want this stress, then it becomes a real question of whether or not to stay in teaching or even become a teacher. But I hope that this video has been able to show you some of the pros of teaching as well as the cons. And if you are thinking of going into teaching, whether that's because you haven't started your career yet or because you're thinking of a career change, think about those cons, but also take a look at the pros and decide if this dynamic of working is going to work for you and your life and your family and your needs. If you are a teacher, then please write in the comments below your pros and cons for teaching. Any that I've missed as well, please put them down below, or any that you particularly resonate with or agree with, write those down below so that others can read them. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, as it really helps out the channel. And if you want to see more videos like this, click the subscribe button and the bell so you never miss a future video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.